Hello, good morning. How are you all? Good? All right. So I'm so grateful to be here. This has been quite an interesting month, wrestling with the topic of intention. I sometimes think I'm invited here to wrestle. Because writing and contemplating around these teachings and what I can share, it's wonderfully heartbreaking. And I want to thank you for that, because it's a real gift to invite somebody to grow and to think more deeply and to just contemplate the richness that is life. So thank you for having me here. Thank you for allowing me to minister to myself as I minister to you, and for you to minister to me and your community, your kindness and generosity. And the title of my talk today is kind of I tried to be millennial-ish by having a little arrow and a dash in between to talk about the interplay of attention and intention, and how they are interdependent, how it's a relationship, how it's a flow, and how we can be in relationship with the two, which really end up being with the one. And so I want to first start by just breaking up the word a little bit. Attention, attention, being attendant to what is at hand, attendant to the heart, the body, the everything, the all in all, not just what's going on in our little fun monkey mind. And intention, breaking that up too, to recognize and celebrate that we are in this life together, in this life in growth, which life is always calling from us. And there is this tension, this push, this pull, this prodding, this divine discontent and discomfort. That is our growth, that is life calling us, reminding us who we are and of the more that we are. And so I'm playing with that today, that tension is a gift, and that it is what actually is the thing that moves us forward and calls for us to be attendant to our lives, intentional in our thinking, in our being, in our presence for each other, and going beyond just ourselves. That there is something greater and beyond ourselves. And we just keep feeling that out. I'm growing. What is this thing I don't know or understand? Oh, look, there's more, and it showed up for me as Ted this morning, or as this parable I found a week ago, or as this interaction I had at work. That life is constantly our teacher. So One Spirit this month, we are an interfaith seminary. We are studying the tradition of Islam. Christianity was December, which right on time. And there's this Islamic parable that I want to just share around intention, which really called to me. I want you to imagine in your mind's eye that you are at a table. And at this table, there are two others with you. And there's a glass of water before you. Just filled, looks good. And one of you chooses not to consume that glass of water. You have no desire for it, and you just ignore it. One of you chooses not to consume it because you're so engrossed in your thoughts right now. You kind of really don't see it. And then there's a third that chooses not to drink because their thoughts are with a fourth, another individual that may be thirstier than those around. And they want to give that glass to that fourth individual. And then I guess you can hear that there's a fourth somewhere in there. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So as we consider in our mind's eye who we might be, I'm going to invite you to consider that we are all of those folks. And so let us see what these four folks can be as our teacher. The question is, for the first person, where is their attention right now? What are they attendant to? They chose to ignore a gift placed before them, and maybe it needed not be consumed. But I think our question might be for ourselves, especially as we really intend to be present, to bear witness to our lives and each other's lives, to the gifts that just come forth and see them as gifts, is, are we ignoring what matters? Are we truly attendant to what is present and before us? And in doing so, are we being intentional with our lives? And in all these questions, please know that they are undergirded by grace. This is not a you did something bad or there's something lacking. It's an invitation to say, how is that working for me? How is that operating in my life? And we know that that first person, too, chooses not to drink because they just know they're not thirsty right now. And there's nothing wrong with self-care. This is also an invitation for healthy boundaries and saying, I know what I need when I need it. And at the same time, the curiosity is, do they know that their cup always overflows? That glass will always be there for them. As that one person around that table, the invitation for us can be to always be curious. Are we trusting? Are we faithful right now? That which sustains us, that which quenches, is always there and present for us. So since life is a constant spiral of growth, up and down, their valleys and their peaks, it is indeed a continuous recommitment and a rediscovery of our wholeness and a pushing out of our comfort. There again is that tension. So, that first person is the part of us that sometimes just ignores what's important. And that just might need a gentle reminder to recommit, to rediscover, to bear forth the gift of curiosity, that we can remain curious in our lives. The second person I'm curious about, because that's often me, that so busy, so distracted perhaps, or in a wonderful way consumed by this but not attendant to that we can be that second person that is so lost in their thoughts that they don't even see the glass of water put in front of them. They may be parched as well. I don't know if you've ever done this, but sometimes I get so busy, I just realize I haven't drank water all day. I wonder if that's that. And I wonder if that's that because it is an invitation for us to direct our gaze. And direct our gaze to what is present right here. We are wonderful at knowing and worrying about the future, or gnashing the past and going through that fun story again. But what is present? What needs our attention right now? What is bearing and being birthed right now that we could be present to? And that, I believe, is the gift of the second person, that they are a reminder to us to just be present. And the third person that is holding out, we don't even know if they're thirsty or not, but they're holding out for a fourth that may be thirstier. In Islam, it is said that the greatest act is one whose intention is for the greater good. That you're doing something for something beyond yourself. It will and should include yourself, of course. We can't leave ourselves out of the circle. But there's this utmost generosity that is within each of us, that is giving at all times. And yet the greatest intention is when that gift is to all, to something greater. And I wonder about that fourth person too. I wonder if that fourth person is the first person that is thirsty and doesn't know it. And what a great witness we can be for each other, for each other's intentions, and be attentive to each other. This is the power of a community like this, of our families, even our coworkers, where we could be attendant and intentional for each other. And then I wonder if the fourth person, I go back to the other parable, which is when two or more are gathered, there I am. And I wonder if the fourth person is God. I wonder if we're holding out because God is thirsty too. That he thirsts for our growth. That God too evolves. That God too needs to be served. And that he sits around our table too. And I think that paradox of how we can be intentional and yet feed the thing that feeds us, that sustain the thing that sustains us, this beautiful cycle of life and of the great mystery of who that fourth person is at our table, that is at the core of intentionality. That we are here for something that perhaps is ineffable, ungraspable, but we're still here for it. That is what faith is. That is what hope is. That we are attendant to something that is not an object, nor a subject, but it just is. It just is. So, in the Islamic texts as well, they're called Gospels sometimes. Jesus is quoted as saying, "Blessed is the one who sees with their heart, but whose self is not in what he sees." Blessed is the one who sees with their heart, but whose self is not in what he sees. And that summarizes to me that parable of the four at the table, is that we get to be invited and get a choice to be intentional at every moment to see with our heart, to give with our heart, our whole being, but not necessarily put ourselves in the middle of it. That it is not necessarily about us, but for all of us. And that there's this astounding generosity. Astounding. And I think, as I was coming here today, I probably shouldn't have done this, but yesterday I watched a documentary about Martin Luther King Jr. It was called King in the Wilderness. It was about the last 18 months of his life. This is after the I Have a Dream speech. This is when he chose to speak out against the Vietnam War and was really cast aside for it. And this is when he took a major turn to working against poverty. And I was struck by something that they said, that radical nonviolence is a radical belief in hope. So as we choose to be intentional, could we choose to be nonviolent with ourselves, that we can make change without saying that we are less than, that we are no good, that we screwed up, that what is wrong with us that this keeps happening, that we have an invitation at all times as we grow, as we change, as we become more attentive and attendant to what is going on, to really practice those words of nonviolence and really subscribe to the idea of radical hope. Not fairy tale stuff, but the idea that in me picking up the knife, or not picking up the knife actually, that I get to make this choice here where I get to walk in faith, to know that I will always have what I need, that glass of water will always be there, that God will be there at the table with me, that my cup always overflows. This radical belief in hope is the promised land, as he put it. And it is the promised land, as he put it, of creative integration. That everything is coming together for our greatest good. All four of those folks around that table is us. All of them together being loved, being held is us. That we can't actually cast aside the first person that was all about their ego and self. That's part of us too. There's goodness in that. It was needed for survival, and it still is. and every other party around that table is us. The promised land is integrating all of that, putting it together. And so in these times when we feel parched, and we can listen to the discourse, I certainly know in the 2020 election it's already starting, may we stay attuned to what we are intending to see in the world and be attendant to what is being birthed and even the ugliness that is being shown to us. And know that grace does the work too. And as one of the last things that King worked on when he worked so diligently around the idea of poverty, may we be aware and attendant to not becoming the poverty ourselves. That in taking note of this and working towards it, that we also don't become that poverty, that we remain generous, that we hold a space at the table for that one that is thirstier than us. Because we know, and as we sang just a couple minutes ago, we are that sacred love. And that sacred love includes, it celebrates, it is creative, it integrates, and it enriches in the subtlest, smallest of ways. So our intention, and my intention here being really to celebrate us and all that we have, the fullness of what we have, the gifts that we have, and know and trust that as we are in tension, as we are growing, that our greatest good is always coming forth. And we could be attendant to all the little gifts that are ahead of us, right in front of us, simple, plain, and vital. Thank you.